Yeah, we can have a sort of an exercise in personal empathy and try to imagine what it's like to be hauled onto a boat deck with a hook through our cheek, our face, sometimes through our eye. Not actually that uncommon that
Oh,
happens.
gosh.
And then, of
Yeah.
course, not only that, but you're suffocating as well.
Hi, guys. Today I have Jonathan Balcombe here to talk about fish sentience and what goes on in the inner lives of fish. I think this is going to be a great video for anyone that wants to understand how complex their inner lives are and how they experience pain, joy, emotions, and things along those lines, just like other land mammals and different animals, and even like humans. Jonathan Balcombe was born in England. He was raised in Canada, where he now lives. He's loved animals ever since age 3 when he decided he wanted to be a hippopotamus. Instead, he became a biologist with a PhD in the study of animal behavior. He has worked for several animal protection organizations, including the Humane Society of the United States and People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. He developed and taught courses in animal behavior and animal sentience for the Viridis Graduate Institute and Humane Society University, and served as associate editor to the open access journal Animal Sentience. His main focus these days is researching and writing books, which include Pleasurable Kingdom, Second Nature, The Exultant Ark, and What a Fish Knows, which is a New York Times bestseller available in 17 languages. His latest book for grown-ups, Superfly, won the National Outdoor Book Award for Natural History Literature. His first children's book, Jake and Ava, A Boy and a Fish, was published in 2021. He is currently writing a book that explores cooperation and joy in the wild. In his spare time, Jonathan enjoys biking, hiking, birding, baking, snorkeling, and learning how to attract more pollinators to his yard. So I present to everybody Dr. Jonathan Balcombe. Okay, hey, Jonathan.
Hi, James. Is it James or Jim?
Jim, James, I guess I go as, if you could call me Jim, that'd be great. My government
Okay.
issued name is James, but I go with Jim to my friends. So yeah, I'm just going to get started and just ask a few questions that maybe you can expand on with your expertise
Sure.
regarding fish. I titled the video, Do Fish Feel Pain? Because that happens to be a big objection or just a thought that people have, like they don't think fish suffer to the degree of which they do, or are subjective to things to the degree of which they are. So I'll start here. So Jonathan, in your research, you've emphasized that fish are sentient beings capable of experiencing pain and pleasure. Can you elaborate on what constitutes sentience in animals and how fish specifically demonstrate sentience?
Sure. Fish demonstrate a range of positive and negative aspects of sentience. Sentience capacity to feel. So pain is certainly highly relevant, pain and pleasure. There have been a number of published studies on the question of pain in fishes, and while there are still some doubters, the broad consensus among scientists is that fishes definitely can feel pain. They're full members of the vertebrate group. They got all the same systems we have, a good functioning brain, nervous system, which is, of course, very relevant to the question of pain. They have nociceptors, which are cells which are receptive to stimuli that may be painful if the animal's conscious. Well, there's not really much doubt that fishes are conscious. They can learn by observation. They can solve problems. They have individual recognition. They have mental mapping. They respond to optical illusions the way we do, not like robots. The list goes on. So what we now know about fishes and their inner lives clearly illustrates they're sentient and they can feel pain. One other study I like to describe too, which demonstrates the pain aspect, is conditioned place preference study, which is just jargon for a study in which you have fishes, in this case it was zebra fishes, living in a complex tank, in one chamber of the tank connected to the other. And they all spent all of their time in the first chamber because it was dimly lit with a lot of places to hide, plants, rocks, etc. That's the kind of places little fish are safe in. The other chamber was brightly lit and barren, so they stayed away from that the whole time. And they continued to stay away when some of them were injected with saline and some were injected with acid, which was presumably going to cause lasting pain if you feel pain. But then when the scientists drizzled a painkiller, lidocaine, in the other chamber, the one that they normally avoided, lo and behold, some of the fishes swam across to that side. and it was only the ones who had been injected with acid. And so it's really a compelling method. It's not very fish friendly, but it's been used on other animals as well to test for pain. And it shows that these fishes had the wherewithal to seek pain relief when it was available to them, and they're willing to pay a cost to get the pain relief. They're willing to go to somewhere they would normally avoid because they don't feel very, very safe there. I think it's a very rare paradigm for demonstrating pain in an animal. And of course, the challenge is we can't occupy the body of another being, even each other. So we have to come up with clever scientific ways.
Even each other, exactly.
Yeah. I can't feel your emotions directly. You can report to me verbally how you're feeling, and that's very informative. And I think you're a decent guy, so I'll trust you that you're not. And I'm pretty sure you're not a robot from outer space who's just saying he feels pain. So all those sorts of dogmatic questions can come up, but really the science very clearly shows these animals are equipped for feeling pain. It's very useful to them evolutionarily to avoid bad things that can cause death and injury, and they show that through the experiments that have been done on them.
Yeah, wow, that's profound. And there's if the viewer picks up a copy of What a Fish Knows, which I encourage everybody to do, because it's like a tome that really discloses and amplifies what happens in their inner lives and in their heads. So they can also, see that in your writings, or something analogous in your writings, I'm sure. So
I can't take credit for these wonderful, clever scientists and the experiments they come up with, but I try to synthesize and report to lay readers what the science is saying. That's kind of where I think my job comes in.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thanks for answering that question. I mean, I guess it's very, very objectively indicative that fish feel pain. And that was a really cool kind of example you laid out. Another one is many people, I guess, they believe that fish are very simple, driven only by instinct, more like automatrons. What kinds of behaviors or actions have you observed in fish that they may experience emotions or psychological states similar to those of more traditionally sentient animals? Like, what kind of emotional gradient do you think they have relative to, say, land mammals?
It's pretty clear from behavioral studies that fishes have a broad range of emotions, and the really basic ones, things like fear, rage, lust, caring, emotions in those kind of domains are clearly there. Not all fishes have the same degree in all kinds, just as different people have different degrees of emotional expression. So, we're talking about over 33,000 different species here. So, inevitably the responses I'm giving are somewhat generalized. But if you look at examples through fish life, you see some amazing behaviors that don't fit, as I say, don't fit a behavior of a robot. One of my favorite is their response to optical illusions. A number of fish species have been tested on the Ebbinghaus illusion, where you have two dots the same size, they're orange dots. But the dots around them.
That's in the book,
larger than the other. There's other ones that have been tested. And the fishes, when they're trained to, say, for instance, with the Ebbinghaus illusion, if they're trained to poke their nose against a dot that's larger than another one, and they're given food reward, so they learn that. And then you present them with the Ebbinghaus illusion, they go to the one that looks larger, the one that we would also think is larger, even though it's not. If they were robots, they would have no trouble knowing that those two circles are the same size. But they're not robots, they're beings. They're fallible. They can have beliefs, and those beliefs can be wrong. I think that's what makes them.
That's profound.
It's what makes them like us. They're fallible, and that's beautiful. It's a beautiful conclusion. But we have things. As I said, observational learning. I just jotted a few down here. There's so many. There was a study of surgeonfishes that showed that they would seek out caresses and sort of like a massage for therapy when they're out. Just really mind blowing. When I read that study while I was researching the book, I thought, gosh, I got to get this in the book. It's one of the fun things about is
they kind of want to be pet in a way.
Yeah, and you can watch YouTube videos. Sure, it's anecdotal stuff, but you can watch YouTube videos of fishes swimming up to hands to be petted and stroked and even lifted out of the water. It's a relationship on trust over time. These are complex, emotional animals, and not surprising. They're vertebrates. They've been around. They've been evolving for 400 million years. They've had a lot of time to develop a lot of complexity.
Yeah. I think one of the stories in your, or the examples in your book was the salmon and how intricate I thought this was just fascinating, how intricate their GPS is. And I think you said you explained it how their GPS isn't it modeled over electromagnetics or something like that?
Well, there is some, the Earth's magnetic field is used by some fishes to navigate.
Yeah.
With the salmon, the ones that return to their natal streams and swim
Yeah.
upstream. There was a very clever study done with chemicals that showed that they learned the chemical fingerprint, if you will, of their own particular stream, and it's memorized by them. And then
That's
just a few years
incredible.
later, after they swam to the ocean and led a life of several years growing in the ocean, when it's time to go back to breed in their natal streams, they cue in on that tiny, 1 molecule per acre or whatever it would
So
be.
granule. Yeah.
It's got to be very, very low stimulus that they're responding to, but they're very sensitive to that. And then they follow that gradient back to the stream. Remarkable,
That
remarkable.
is unbelievable. That's one of the things that stuck with me from the book was that just how intelligent and just almost like unfathomable, like that is somebody can do that. Like that's just
Yeah,
absolutely unbelievable.
right. And I particularly like examples like that because they give us hopefully a little bit of humility that we don't have the highest level of all these capacities.
Yeah.
We don't have much if any geomagnetic sense. We don't have electric sensing the way sharks do. They can detect faint electric pulses, very useful for them, and not apparently not very useful for us. And then the salmon with this incredible chemical sense that is so fine grained. We talk about dogs as well having that, and other animals that have much more acute senses than us. That's one of the points I try to make early in the book, is that it's not just whether they have the same senses we have, they have some that we don't have. So
Yeah. They
we need to
even
get off on a pedestal and not think we're so superior all the time.
Exactly. I think that's a great point. Like, not only are they just as effectively as sentient as us, but they have these things that are beyond us. They could even look at us as inferior in these ways through these purviews.
Fortunately, they apparently don't seem to have the human type style of ego that
Yeah.
makes them do that.
Yeah. 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 Another net negative for us, for humans. Um, Another one that I think is important is kind of the human impact on fish welfare and what we do with fishing industry and aquaculture that is just really terrible. Like, can you share some ways that human activity directly impacts the well-being of fish and how recognizing their sentience could really change our thoughts that this should be okay to them? But how do humans, like, what are we doing to them effectively? I mean, maybe we can start at like the level of when they're caught by a hook, and then up to when they're caught in nets. Like, what does it feel like, do you think, from their subjective experience along those lines?
Yeah, we can have a sort of an exercise in personal empathy and try to imagine what it's like to be hauled onto a boat deck with a hook through our cheek, our face, sometimes through our eye. Not actually that uncommon that
Oh
happens.
gosh,
And then, of
yeah,
course, not only that, but you're suffocating as well because you're taken out of your
yeah, it's
normal
compound.
medium where you breathe. So the real flip side would be, grabbing someone, hooking them, and dunking them underwater and holding them there. A
Yeah,
pretty scary, painful event, I'm sure, for any fish.
yeah,
And fish get tossed back. Cynics don't call it catch and release; they call it maim and release because often these animals have injuries. There was one study that I cite in my book where they actually kept fishes after being caught and removed from hooks for observation. And depending on the species and the location and the equipment being used, mortality rates definitely go up quite a bit higher than
oh, I bet.
so, hooks are a pretty nasty way, and you may have seen fishermen when they yank on the line
Yeah,
hopefully to snag the fish, and that's pretty random where that hook may end up going.
yeah, yeah, it can go anywhere. And we
Swallowing
think,
hooks and that sort of thing. So then you think about netting and catching in nets, trawlers, and these big nets, the long lines. They're indiscriminate. They're like traps on land. They catch a lot of non-target animals, and fishing boats around the world are hauling up huge amounts of so-called bycatch
yeah,
species targeted, and they're either dumped back into the ocean, half dead or dead already, Some of them are kept for pet food and that sort of thing. But the death toll is very high, and it's non-targeted, so they're not considered valuable. I show a slide when I give talks on fishes of a shrimp fishing boat, a close-up of a shrimping net from a vessel from Mozambique, and you have to look really hard to find any shrimp in there. Shrimp industry is one of the worst for bycatch.
Oh,
Rates of over 90% in some cases, so a very high wastage rate. And of course, those are all sentient beings too, the ones who
yeah.
thrown back into the ocean, mostly dead or dying. They're indiscriminate. The long lines, marine mammals, sea turtles get caught on them. Oceanic birds, albatrosses, gannets, boobies, species like that who dive to catch fish. They see a fish under there, and they grab it, and they get caught in the hook,
Yeah.
so they drown. And there's numbers out there, and the numbers are horrible. They're just hundreds of thousands of individuals.
Incredible. And this information is directly suppressed by industry. Like, industry doesn't want this to come out because they know that people do have hearts. And this is really profound information that you're sharing right now. I mean, these are systems that we are paying for and we are voting for every single day, 3 times a day. And we're invoking what you just described as far as subjecting these fish and shrimp to these sentient beings to unbelievable amounts of pain and suffering just for the sake of a meal. And a lot of people, I don't think, understand the reality of how their vote works when they're voting 3 times a day, and how that vote really eclipses any kind of political vote that would align, they want to, exact their values into.
I'm glad you put it that way. I think it's a very important way to put it. And it's actually empowering, because as a consumer, we have control. We can remove our vote, as you call it. We can remove our funding whenever we buy a product. We're essentially funding the company to make more of it. We're saying, again, well, I don't want them to fish that way. I don't want them to do those things to fishes, so I don't buy the product, and that gives me some sense of power. We just need more people doing that. Unfortunately, people lithely ordering their burgers and their fish and chips and what have you. So we need to keep working at it. I'm glad you're doing this sort of thing, because people need.
So I really appreciate that. Those were pretty much my questions. What would you like to add as far as like fish sentience, and maybe for people watching that are curious about the inner lives of fish, and maybe they're pescatarian. What would you like to add, maybe as far as what on top of what we've already talked about?
Yeah, I wrote down a few examples. I cover a lot in my book, but here's just a few salient examples. Parenting is something that fishes do. Not all of them. Some of them just drop the eggs and the sperm into the water in large numbers, and some of them are going to get fertilized and not eaten, that kind of approach. But you also have to look after their young for sometimes weeks. One of the most virtuous and noble examples is the mouth-brooding cichlids of African lakes, who have evolved this brilliant protection strategy for their young, where if danger's coming, they open their mouth, they signal to their young, and the young know the drill. They come swim over, and you can watch wonderful YouTube videos of this. It looks like vomiting in reverse, because the male opens up his mouth, and all the fishes swim into the mouth of the dad.
I see.
Studies show that males, because it's only the males who do this, have more cavernous mouths than females. Real big mouths, and they hold the young in there until the danger's past, and they let them out again. I've seen parenting behavior right here on Lake Ontario, where I live. My partner and I, we were out along the lake shore when it flooded a couple of years ago, and she said, "What's that?" She's pointing to this black mass. It looked like a giant amoeba morphing through the water, slowly moving along the shore. Oh, wow. We had rubber boots, so we stood there, and they came right towards us, and it was about 500 fry, or young fishes, of the bowfin, which is considered a primitive fish, which is a misnomer anyway, just because it's been a long time. And there was one dad fish. It's the daddy, once again, who does the daycare, and he's got about 500 baby ones swimming all around him. We could put our fingers in the water. It felt like dipping it into jelly, lumps of jelly, because the little babies are so soft.
Oh, wow.
In a tight mass. At one point, a little group of them wandered off, and the dad went over and corralled them and gently brought them back. So it was just a very touching scene. Sometimes he was so surrounded with these young, he disappeared. It was just this morph, this amoeba type thing.
Wow. Like a fleeting moment in time you experienced.
Amazing place to be. I'd read about the parental behavior. But
wow.
Electric communication, I mean, there's two groups of fishes that have evolved electric communication apparently separately through evolutionary time, because one group is in the elephant nose fishes is African, and the other group, the knife fishes, are South American. So they're separated by a long distance, an ocean, and these are fishes who live in inland in fresh waters, and they communicate by electricity. So they have their signatures, which are kind of individual, like your name and my name.
Yeah.
So and they can refer to each other. They also will defer to each other. One swimming through another's territory will stop making any electrical signals because they don't want to disturb them and upset the resident. And they will court.
Wow.
And these other individuals can read a lot of information: age, sex, libido. You know, how interested might they be in mating? All these sorts of things. So it's a
Wow.
fascinating communication that occurs on a channel that we're just not tuned into because we have developed electric sensing equipment.
Wow. It almost borders on telepathy. It feels like just picking up on thoughts out to almost to that extent. Like
it is to our senses, it does seem like telepathy, you know, and it's nice
wow.
for them too because most other animals in their realm are not detecting these electric signals, so they're able to sort of swim under the radar, so to speak. And they're living in murky water, which is why they've evolved this wonderful communication system to begin with, because vision is not useful. So their sense of smell and their electric sense and their sense of hearing tend to be quite advanced in those situations. So it's just another example. I mentioned the optical
Right.
illusion. We talked about navigation. Observational learning is considered a pretty high level cognitive skill where you can learn to do something better just by simply watching others do it. Studies of artificials who squirt water at insects, which in itself is a pretty fascinating aspect of their biology. You can get a young artifish who's naive and doesn't know how to do this, and you can just have them watch other artificials doing that skill. And if you then give them a chance, they'll do much better than if they haven't had the opportunity to watch another. That's called.
Oh wow. Wow. That's incredible.
I mean, even bumblebees can do that. You know, we're not here to talk about insects today, but one of the things that we're discovering is we've grossly underestimated the abilities of animals to do what they do. And we've been very prejudicious and biased against things like fishes because they live in the water and they don't breathe air like we do, but also insects because don't have a backbone, while they have pretty sophisticated behavior of their own. But we're not here to talk about insects. So.
Yeah, but maybe another one we could talk about, because I know you have the book Superfly that came out not too long ago. I have not yet picked up a copy, but I definitely plan on doing that just to adopt more knowledge on the subject.
Yeah, well, that book will be there whenever you're ready for it, Jim.
Fantastic. Well, I'll definitely be picking it up. I think we pretty much covered everything here. I thought it was very just profound the way you speak on fish. It's unbelievable, inspiring, and I'm hoping a lot of people can learn from our dynamic here today. So I really appreciate you, Jonathan.
Sure. Well, they inspire me, and I feel honored to be a mouthpiece for them, to be somebody who can share some of the things they can do.
Yeah,
really
yeah.
Short.
It just unbelievable creatures. I still can't fathom. I still don't think anybody can really fathom to I mean, maybe you can the absolute extent of their capacities, but something I want to keep learning about. So
yeah, the closer we look, the more we discover there's so much going on out there that we don't have a clue yet. And of course, as scientists ask questions about what's going on in here, what's going on here with the emotions, more phenomena come to light, and it's an exciting time to be one who studies animal behavior. I can tell you that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, did you want to add anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think we have covered it fine. There's lots we haven't covered, but I think the main points are there. And I also really appreciate that you connected it back to our own personal lives and our own personal behavior. We can have a positive impact on fishes. We can refrain from torturing them on fishing lines, and we can also refrain from buying them at the supermarket. If you buy them at the supermarket, you're as you said, you're making a vote for doing it again, for that company to do whatever they did to get it there. Look into how they got it there. Look into fishing methods. Look into aquaculture. It's a lovely sounding word, aquaculture, but it's a horrible
Isn't it though? Yeah.
People need to know about that. So that's one thing we haven't talked about today, but aquaculture, produces almost half the fish humans eat, which is probably a few 100 billion a year.
Yeah.
And it's not good living conditions for them. Aquaculture is not something that anyone should support.
And one thing I just remembered was nutritionally, we don't need anything from fish. Some people think there's certain things like omegas that we need to get from fish. And I think it's important to touch that we don't. And
That's
the fish
right.
get them from the algae, right? I believe.
I think mostly, but we can get it from flaxseed is certainly a classical one. But I think
You have walnuts.
there's a few others. Walnuts, right? There's some other ones that are great foods. Not only can we get everything, but we can also avoid getting things like zinc and mercury and other, metals, heavy metals, and other impurities that get
Dietary
concentrated in
cholesterol.
our
Yeah.
bodies. Yeah. So there's a lot of hazards to eating fishes, and I'm glad to not eat them for that reason as well.
Yeah. It's a win-win, leaving the fish off the table for the fish and for our own health as well, but mainly for the fish.
And planet too, yeah.
Well, thanks, Jonathan. This has been amazing. Thank you for your expertise. Yeah, I'll probably, just to cut out of the kind of limelight here, I'll probably curate the video a little bit and have a nice intro for us. Have it floated into the general videos on my channel. Probably in the next day or so. So I'm hoping to have something nice for everybody to see. I really appreciate you giving your time to us here.
Thanks, Jim. You're a natural. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh, gosh.
We covered a lot of good bases.
Yeah, well, enjoy your day in Ontario or Lake Ontario. And
thank you.
We're about to get a storm here of sorts. I was going to go outside and maybe do some outreach today, but the weather and the elements will always be a kind of barrier there. We're getting some kind of snowstorm today, and it's going to last throughout tomorrow. So I'm here with my daughter. She's home from school, and we're going to play games, maybe some Clue. And
like some bad weather,
snacks.
winter weather to keep you indoors doing that sort of thing.
Yep. Sometimes the cozy factor is nice.
Yes, it is. Well, enjoy your time together.
And you as well, with you and your partner as well. Well, we will talk to you later on. And everybody have a great day. And thanks a lot, Jonathan.
Okay, Jim. Take care.
All right. Well, take care, sir.
Bye.